yeah. Need workers' comp insurance? Get a quote in 3 minutes at easiestpie.com. Closed captioning brought to you by Works Relief. Prevent and relieve muscle
Hello.
cramps. If you're suffering from muscle
Hey.
muscle spasms,
Hi.
you need to try Works Relief.
Everybody.
Patients tell me every day
Social media family being whatsoever racist, but then not necessarily being whatever walks of life, factions of society, or lifestyle preferences. I mean, being that cause the reason or purpose for that my president said so. I mentioned it that last. I mean, gotta recognize and realize people's places and things, being at the wrong place at the wrong time, in or with the wrong crowd, can or could possibly have some or such rather serious consequences or severe ones for whatever I said. And hopefully I don't have to go there today. You know what I mean? Read between the lines, fill in the blanks. And so I say to you all, being of whom are in addition of the old and young alike of both two sexual genders of males and females, representing not only the human species, but then nevertheless our global community within this post-911 era of a new millennium, of this apocalyptic day and age, and where the doomsday clock is now at a few minutes of midnight, compared on to how formerly, previously, or prior to then, however said, was at a quarter to midnight for these rather biblically prophetic times. How are you all doing or feeling? How you living? Well, hopefully everyone or everybody, everyone wants to put it, is at least feeling okay, if not better yet to be said, to be feeling all right, or if not best of all to be said, to be feeling less than stressed, more blessed than stressed, or too blessed to possibly come or be stressed, you and yours, your family, friends, hopefully me and mine, likewise as well, or the same. I know, I repeat, there's certain words, it may sound different, but mean the same thing. I'm sorry about that, and for the last mention. Then sometimes it is, how should I put it? It is a good thing to repeat something to make sure that nobody gets, little or nobody gets a misunderstanding what a person is trying to say. Although I don't speak so much as eloquent English or the American dialect, but I think I speak a fair quality and quantity of it.
I think the message that Joe Biden gave in Ohio,
so that you all could possibly get at least the general idea of what I'm trying to say that was sound and or seem coherent, or hopefully half as much, if not, mostly or altogether.
The areas where Trump made
so let me point that out.
On the jobs message when you went to places in Ohio where
but then whatsoever I could speak upon, be it one subject matter, an issue at hand, or be able to speak upon, excuse me, please. Press speech continue regular in my mind, compared to how the press doctrine to confuse my speech if and when I ask for your help. And as I think of it with that my mind's attention to try to backtrack here, with reason on purpose of being, once I can go on to following to continue from where I went, and my person at last left off to finish up as a complete upon the previous or prior line of thought in that same sense. Or be able to speak upon a couple, few, or four more, in other words, topics of discussions to be debated or given arguments with many different views and opinions associated with some such thereof, and hopefully with that much less usages of abuse of profanity compared on to that much more. Therefore, hopefully likewise, as well, I was saying, with that much less of a chance to be playing the part of the devil's advocate, and there's less to evil than a prodigal son, or the worst of two evils is of the likes of some of such being of whom are among themselves of those to be possibly considered of the worst or the worstest of unbelievers and nonbelievers, being of deceivers who pretend to be believers in God as in Christians, a.k.a. Protestants, and therefore they themselves would be considered as being of the likes of the worst or the worstest of closet devil worshippers, being of whom make up the majority of church-goers or whatsoever religious denominations, from the pews to pulpits, of members and visitors alike. Then get back to, yes.
This becomes, as is always the case in Pennsylvania,
And
a turnout game.
to finish up something that I said last, as a backtrack here, to go on with the following, to try to think of it with a mind's intentions to try to do so. So far as it is concerning regarding or making reference to that the basic intro as an introduction before I were to get to speaking upon some such of a subject matter here and there, or find one or a couple few or four more for that matter, depending on how I feel as a pregnant moment time. Okay. Then whatsoever I could speak upon, be it a controversy or not, or be it a plague upon any given society for any given country or nation that represents the global community within this post-911 era, for these end times, before the end of the world, the second coming of Christ, whichever comes first. Yes, be it of an issue at hand, a problematic situation or case, or of a given argument to be debated, of a topic of discussion or some such subject matter that could be, gone about, debated for one and many, more than quite a few, to express their different views and opinions thereof associated with some such of a given argument, be it a plague upon society that has yet to be resolved, that has not been already. But then don't kill the messenger. I'm just here to deliver, okay? And no internet trolls, if you please. I could care less if you look at it from one point of view, if not another. I mean, I don't cater to negativity. If any internet trolls come into my own social media website address, account for some of such air broadcasts to be possibly considered attempting to sabotage it, or to spread gloom and doom, or to come off like some or such a one, being of whom is attempting to promote a platform of negativity. Don't even think it. Take a hike. I'm not geeing for it. Okay. I mean, I'm not your shrink. I'm not your exorcist. I could become subject to experiencing more than enough of my own demons in the flesh, so I don't necessarily need to be influenced by somebody else's and some such negativity. Okay. I mean, if someone has hurt you in the past, don't get to confuse me with that person or character, assume me to be, and as the lights can or could possibly compare on to certain or particular proverbial neighbors from hell, or public-nuisance or problem neighbors who will be moonlighting as crank callers of characters. As a matter of fact, I had been contacted by the likes of one of kind most recently within the last half an hour. I yet to get to my cell phone, but eventually I'm going to reprimand the character and then block one if I have to. Okay, because life is too short to be permitting somebody else to take another person hostage to their rather twisted, warped, wicked mindset and Whereas this one neighbor of mine among likes his kind, he's a real Looney Tunes, real nutcase, crackpot, crank, a likes a psychopath, sociopath, sadomasochist, and sadist, but is equal as well, cowardly bully, and terrorist-wannabe. So, okay, but then we're not going to focus on that. Regardless of how I am feeling, you know, want to focus so much upon that. Then, as you notice, the title to this one particular social media website address, broadcast mine, that I'm a account holder of, whereas I'm supposed to be within or in the 6th day of my self-quarantine. And just when I thought I was getting better, well, I still feel a little better than what I felt before, but it seemed like I got a little worse. I have to go about with, that other necessary business at hand to concoct some additional home remedies for that matter, not to mention, as that would complement or supplement that taking over-the-counter drugs, and not to mention prescription medicines. Because this stuff is real out here. This global pandemic, or the corona-faggot virus, or COVID-19 global pandemic. I mean, that's what I believe. I believe that a great percentage of it has something to do with, the male card-carrying members to the LGBT community. Okay. It would be much more accurate to call it what I have than for our own president. Well, he has since rephrased that label he had given it, because at one time or another, he had called it the corona Chinese virus before he had renamed it, relabeled it as the corona China virus, and that's a good thing, so as not to be directed, some such prejudicious bias opinions against a particular race of people, persons, or nationality, because that would be wrong to be saying something that is, having little or no substance to it, or more fiction, or to be considered being much more fictional than non-fictional. Whereas, if anything, it would be much more accurate to assume or think that a great percentage of the coronavirus or COVID-19 is being exacerbated by the likes of gay guys, homos, or faggots. And because it could have started anywhere than just in China. As a matter of fact, I remember somebody saying that it had broke out somewhere else before it had broke out in China. But then I was researching matters some sort of such type of social media website address engine, whereas it said that the coronavirus or COVID-19 has been around since the 1930s. Can you imagine that? If not earlier than that. Then at one time or another, the global community had become subjected to experiencing a global pandemic about a century or 100 years ago, before we become subjected to experiencing some such about something like for a time frame period of a century or 100 years later. And I'm wondering if it could possibly be that of the same global pandemic, in some degree. We really do have to get back to the basics with regards to our battle against the COVID, and do what we can to bring down these numbers, because they are. Anyway, though, I feel like crap, y'all. It's a wonder I'm doing this particular broadcast. I have had to force myself to do it, so any of you who could be possibly watching and listening at the moment, then you better appreciate it, because I really didn't feel like doing it at the moment. I want to postpone it for another day. No, then I get to think, well, more or less, but then I get to thinking, no, I gotta do this here daily chronicle up until the time I were to end my self-quarantine, And that way, if anybody were to question that my general physical health in that regard, in reference to, then I could honestly say, without lying and telling the truth, the fact of the matter, that I did self-quarantine. I did self-quarantine myself for the number of days so stated by the medical establishment, or by doctors and nurses. Though at one time or another, I paid a visit to this hospital or that hospital, where one doctor told me one thing, another doctor told me something else altogether different. But then, as an added safety precaution, I had decided to self-quarantine myself for a number of days up until the time that I will end it. No, not my life, but the quarantine. And it's like for a time frame period of more or less like 1/3 of a month. How many days in a month? About 30 days. Some months have 31 days, some have shorter than 30. But that's what I have taken the liberty to do. Okay? Man, because it is a rather severe, serious matter this year. Virus or pandemic. And I myself personally, being that my person, think that the president of the USA, the present president of the USA, is retarded. I was trying to give him the benefit of the doubt, but with all things considered, and no offense is meant to be directed at the much more familiar, mentally challenged, who have much more of a legit excuse for being that way, or the way they are. I mean, this president has actually made fun of the mentally challenged at one time or another. And though there are some things that I like that he does, there are other things that I don't like that he does. And one of them is that he's not exercising that are the rights and privileges of his powers of authority as the leader of the free world within the Western Hemisphere, or as the president of our own democratic republic, suppose a so-called democracy, or whatever I said, to grill it into the many different races of peoples, or persons, or whatsoever walks of life, factions of society, or lifestyle preferences, being of the old and young alike, or both two sexual genders of males and females, that this here virus or pandemic is serious, and that each and every one of us should, go about the necessary business at hand of protecting ourselves from it. And that's including wearing masks whenever we are in the presence of other people, other persons. And so far, he is not so much as, informing the many different races or whatever walks of life nationwide to do that, to combat this here coronavirus, COVID-19. That's just crazy. That's insane, Still attending mass rallies with numbers of his patrons not wearing any masks. I think there's something seriously wrong with our present president of the USA, United States of America. Something is really wrong with him, And although, regardless of how he himself is supposed to be the lesser two evils compared to the political challenger of a presidential candidate being of a former ex-VP, the very reason purpose, reason, purpose. I say that where I think this way, and as I try to, educate and inform y'all about the political challenger, being whom I believe to be the worst of two evils. It's being that because, unlike our president of the United States of America, where he wanted to have 4 black males hanging from the it's called the hangman's noose, or what, or you know what I'm gonna say, or whatever, or however I'm gonna put it. The 4 young black males who were falsely accused of raping a white woman in the city of the Big Apple West. The presidential candidate of a political challenger otherwise went a step further, whereas at one time or another, even in the calendar year 1984 or 1994, he was the chief architect of a bill that was passed into law by our U.S. American Congress, or the House of Representatives and the Senate, whereas he was saying that if an ethnic minority male, or mainly or mostly black brothers, more than any other races of non-white males, were to get a third strike against them or us, that from there we can or could possibly go to jail for life. See, and that's why I consider Slow Joe JB to be the worst of two evils than DT, the dotard president of the u.s.a. United States of America. Hi, kim-yo-jung, sister of Kim-yo-jung, in the commie country or commie nation of North Korea. How you living? Do you still want to become my closet girlfriend, as I have made a proposition, a proposal to you? And the supposed so-called great leader of North Korea, I think his sister is now the one who is holding the power for that small, tiny, commie island country or nation. Yeah. Which is supposed to be either the size of New Jersey or Pennsylvania, etc. Anyway, though, getting back to some such other side about that. Yeah. Then just as I would think to go about given that the basic intro, then I will speak upon a subject matter or a couple people that matter, or more, depending on how I feel at some given moment in time. But then, nevertheless, last but not least, I will give a closing. You have to force myself to say it, but it'll come naturally for me to express myself in that line of sense of word and disregard any interruptions that you may hear, not so much as television or radio I could be playing, but a neighbor from hell, faggotty, or closet-faggot, creep and crazy. He's creepy as much as he's crazy, or he's just as much as creepy as well. He'd be making quite a bit of crazy racket, noises of different sorts of types. He could possibly, or probably is creeping now, even as I speak. This male character that would remind one of many about some of such that were played in movie flicks like Psycho or Silence of the Lambs. There's this one particular neighbor is like the real life serial killers of nutcases, crackpots, or cranks I suspect to be a closet serial killer. and maybe likewise the worst yet, a SARS, and maybe likewise worse yet, a cross out like that. French people continue reading and I compare. By the present doctrine attempt to confuse my speech if when I ask for your help. But then, nevertheless, whereas he could also possibly be a closet, what I mean, a closet rapist. You know, be he related to JWG or JD, John Wayne Gacy or Jeffrey Dahmer or not. You know, I mean, we got some real idiots in this world. Idiots and our sickos upon the increase in this world. Then getting back to some subject, as I try to knock this out now, then I'm going to close the broadcast and try to, rest up, take the necessary home remedies, over-the-counter drugs, prescription meds, If I have to pay a visit to a medical facility, be it public or private, for its firms or properties, real estate for a given vicinity, neighborhood, community. After a while, so be it, so let it be done. Because this here coronavirus of COVID-19 is a killer. It's worldwide, it's on a global level. But anyway, though, let me get into this here before I will close out. That is by saying, if you haven't gotten Christ as your own personal Lord and Savior, I would hope that you would think to do so now while the blood is still running warm in your veins. By recognizing or realizing what he himself had done or did upon the cross of Calvary on the hill of Golgotha, suffering at the hands of some Roman soldiers up on the orders of their superiors, be they religious or otherwise, but then nevertheless, whereas he permitted himself to be crucified, to become that perfect sacrifice, the only sacrifice for you as well as for me. So that if any of us being of whatsoever race and whatever walks of life, factions of society, lifestyle preferences, being of the old, young, alike, of both two sexual genders, of males and females, representing not only the global community, but then that represent not only the human species, but the global community is what I mean to say. First peace continue to better my mind, compare that first life and scripture confused. My speech if and when I would ask for your help. That's for your help and our guidance.
Not true, correct?
Yeah.
It's absolutely not true. It is another lie.
Whereas if any of us being of whatsoever races and whatever walks of life, factions of society, lifestyle preferences, being of the old, young, like both two sexual genders, representing not only the human species of males and females, but the global community within this post-911 era of a new millennium apocalyptic day and age where the doomsday clock is now at a couple of few minutes of midnight compared on how formerly previously or prior to that it was at a quarter midnight for these rather biblically prepared time word to profess some such faith in him. Religious beliefs or spirituality, from there we will become and be blessed from one God another. And more ways than one. First and foremost with this salvation, which is the only means by which any of us can or could possibly hope to enter into the kingdom of heaven once we were to make that transition for the great beyond of the hereafter, the afterlife. The second of all, with his deliverance. But first, you have got to get his salvation before you can or could possibly receive any blessings. Otherwise, you have nothing coming. And if you could possibly go into the great beyond without the blood sacrifice of our Lord and Savior Christ, the Messiah, deliverer, then from there you would be assembled with the rest of the unsaved unbelievers and nonbelievers of lost, damned human souls who would be burning forever for all eternity. And lake of fire, a damn hell in the presence of the devil and his demons, compared to how we as believers in God, as in Christians, a.k.a. Protestants, not supposed to so-called Jehovah's Witnesses, not supposed to so-called Latter-day Saints as well, not supposed to so-called Catholics or whatever other to be possibly considered false-brethen, some such. And they say that I thought it's just work. Then getting back to what few real true believers in God or Christians, a.k.a. Protestants, been some such as I myself, where we would be across that great divide that separates the kingdom of heaven from that of the underworld of damn hell, within the presence of other like-minded believers in God as in Christians, a.k.a. Protestants, as citizens of the kingdom of heaven and in the presence of God and his angels otherwise. Hey, you all take care and be safe. Be blessed, not stressed. Peace and love, joy and happiness, and I'll get back with you. if and when, you know, I hope that you have meditated upon what I was saying, especially in regards to Christ's salvation. Y'all care and be safe and be blessed. Peace.
For anyone else. So I guess that's